how a cosmos might manifest from reality, and whether self and cosmos are in fact real. There's a great tradition, probably 1,200 years old, at least, in India, where analogical reasoning, looking at dreams and hallucinations as comparative experiences that we all have, might explain how a universe could arise and yet not be real. Arise in some imagination, arise in some consciousness, but not be real if reality is single, is an unbroken, homogenized whole, has no differentiations within it. When looked at closely, the analogy of dream and hallucination as creative agencies collapses. Because both dreams and hallucinations are founded on prior experience. Something real has been experienced, has become part of the body of our lives, of our existence, and may be thrown into a different order when we sleep and dream, or when our minds are disturbed, our consciousness is aberrant, and somehow things come into some shape to puzzle and baffle the mind. But all of these are traced foundationally to experiences that we've had before. And if that's true, then we cannot compare our experiences with the experience of Brahman, who, as an integer of real being, somehow would itself be diluted and bring into reality, into some shape, a cosmos either through the power of dream, because there's been no experience in this unpartite being, or in hallucination, because how could a perfect consciousness in the first place hallucinate? So we have had to set that aside as an inadequate argument for the rising of the world. We must delve deeper. So Sri Aurobindo begins with mottos, with citations, to establish a context again. And the first that he draws from is the Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination, likely authored by Adi Shankaracharya, who lived from 788 to, let's say, 820 in the Common Era. And this is perhaps his most famous statement, which is quoted here. It's verse 20. The eternal is true. The world is a lie. In Sanskrit, it is Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. Brahman is that reality, that unpartite, undivided, absolute. Satyam is a word that means true, but it means founded on real being. Satyam comes from Sat. Sat is reality, as we have seen. It is true being, absolute existence. So Satyam, truth, is founded upon that. So if Brahman is the truth, Shankara argues that the world, being multifarious, divided, coming and going, transient as it were, is a lie. Mithya means lie. The entire 20th verse of the crest jewel of discrimination would read like this in English. A firm understanding that Brahman is truth and the world is a lie is called discrimination, viveka, between the eternal and the transient. So this is pivotal in our understanding of the Mayavadin's view of the world. Let us keep this phrase close to us. He proceeds from Shankara to the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. He has a couple of citations here. That means, by the way, the white-horsed one. The Upanishad of the white-horsed one. Having a white horse means a power of purity in the being. Great energy, but not just sheer unbridled energy, but energy of the purest kind, auspicious. And this says, the master of Maya, Mayi, creates this world by his Maya, and within it is confined another, Tasman Anya. One should know Vidya, his Maya, as nature, Prakriti, and the master of Maya, Mayinam, as the great Lord of all, Maheshwaram. There's a lot involved in this phrase. The master of Maya suggests that, unlike the first citation, where Brahman is an impersonal reality, the master of Maya implies that there is a personal being who somehow uses this cunning agency of consciousness to take his own oneness and to manifest a manifold world through it. And it says, and within it is confined another, or the other, which would mean us. So we are confined as viewers, as observers, as experiencers within the world of this Maya. We live within the Maya, looking at it. The master of Maya is free of it, is not trapped within it. One should know, and deeply know, not just glancingly know, one should know his Maya as nature, and the master as the Lord of all. Maheshwaram refers likely to Shiva. Then there's a second citation from the same Upanishad. It occurs a little earlier in it. The Purusha is all this that is. In other words, the Purusha is the conscious person. The Purusha is singular here. The Purusha is all this that is. So the singular Purusha has become the multiple all. What has been and what is yet to be. Purusha evidam sarvam yad bhutam yatcha bhavyam. He is the master of immortality, and he is whatever grows by food. Finally, there's a citation from the Bhagavad Gita. All is the divine being. It says Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. So it's a little different than just saying the divine being. Vasudeva is not an impersonal reality. It's not simply a divine being. It is the divine being. It is a personal divinity. It has personhood. It is not simply a blank field of sheer existence. This is a conscious being who is aware of itself and has apparently, isn't it, distributed itself and manifested itself in the all, because all, sarvam, is Vasudeva. So Vasudeva literally means the son of Vasudeva. And the son of Vasudeva is Krishna, who is a human being working and living in the world, emblematic of a conscious descent of that supreme Godhead who has every name and no name, who is unknowable and yet the supreme person. So that is who Vasudeva is. Something that is transcendent, something that is a personal God, creating the vastness of the cosmos and supporting it, and at one and the same time manifesting itself in a conscious human being, in an incarnation, as a swooping descent, bringing all the riches of that supreme existence into the space of a human vehicle, without losing its cosmicity or its transcendence. So now I think we can open the chapter and begin reading Sri Aurobindo's words. But so far, we have only cleared a part of the foreground of the field of inquiry. In the background, the problem remains unsolved and entire. It is the problem of the nature of the original consciousness or power that has created or conceptively constructed or manifested the universe, and the relation to it of our world cognition. In sum, whether the universe is a figment of consciousness imposed on our mind by a supreme force of illusion, or a true formation of being experienced by us with a still ignorant but an increasing knowledge. I think we know where he tends to place the force of his argument, but let's follow the argument out. So in other words, or how does the Chit Shakti convert Sat into the world? How does the conscious force convert its own being into a playful exposition as a universe? A figment, let us note, from fingere in Latin, to form, means a fabrication or an invention. So it's an invention of consciousness. Is it an illusion, or is it real, and are we simply growing out of ignorance towards knowledge? And the true question, he says, is not of mind alone, or of a cosmic dream, or a cosmic hallucination born of mind, but of the nature of the reality, the validity of the creative action that takes place in it or is imposed upon it. The presence or absence of a real content in its or our consciousness, and its or our regard on the universe. This is not then a question of an agency of consciousness, the mind standing for consciousness in its largest sense. It is not a functional or instrumental question. What is at the base? He says, on behalf of illusionism, it can be answered to the position put forward by us with regard to the truth of existence that all this might be valid within the bounds of the cosmic illusion. It is the system, the pragmatic machinery by which Maya works and maintains herself in the ignorance. But the truths, possibilities, actualities of the cosmic system are true and actual only within the illusion. Outside that magic circle, they have no validity. They are not abiding and eternal realities. All are temporary figures, the works of knowledge no less than the works of ignorance. This would be the Mayavadin's position and argument. Well and good. If Maya creates this show of chicanery, the rules and the order of things are valid as long as you're within that realm of Maya. But they refer not to Brahman as it really is. It can be conceded, he says, that knowledge is a useful instrument of the illusion of mind for escaping from herself, for destroying herself in the mind. So knowledge might free us from Maya. Spiritual knowledge is indispensable, but the one true truth, the only abiding reality beyond all duality of knowledge and ignorance, is the eternal, relationless absolute, or the self, the eternal, pure existence. Again, this is the Mayavadin's argument. Now, Sri Aurobindo comments, all here turns on the mind's conception and the mental being's experience of reality. So we come back to philosophy. How do we conceive and how do we frame it? Which is why he's bothering to write The Life Divine. And the experience of it is key, even more key, because Sri Aurobindo and others have found that it is the experience, of course, which leads to illumination, to enlightenment, to freedom from ignorance. So, how vast is our conception? How deep is our experience? For according to the mind's experience or conception of reality will be its interpretation of data otherwise identical, the facts of the cosmos, individual experience, the realization of the supreme transcendence. And this, by the way, follows true not only in how we regard things philosophically, but even in our psychological experience of things. And I know this is an aside, please forgive me for this, but if you look at the gradual paths of enlightenment, all replicate similar steps in how they proceed to internalize and lead the cognition towards the point of illumination, towards the point of enlightenment. Very similar. You can see stage after stage, similar in nature to its neighbor. The Buddhist will experience it in one way. The Vedantin will experience it in another way. In other words, the paths are parallel. They go through the same steps. But when they get to the point where they open up and realize, they realize according to the coding that has gone into their mind, their study of texts. The Buddhist will experience discontinuity. One moment seems to be followed by another moment, but they are not necessarily connected by a chain of causation. So reality is discontinuous. One from the Vedantic background will see that things are changing constantly, but it's always the same thing changing. They have followed a different method of meditation, but have arrived at that conclusion. If you look at the styles of meditation, they're doing the same thing. It seems to be we see the story that we train ourselves to see. Now, what I think is particularly interesting about Sri Aurobindo is that he begins in 1908 with this transcendent experience of Brahmic Nirvana, which annihilates the reality of the universe. And that is a picture that the Mayavadin and that the Buddhist will immediately find a kinship with. But then, within a year or two, Sri Aurobindo has gone, in his own language, beyond that experience and had an all-absorbing experience of a universal Godhead which has distributed itself endlessly to the view. He says it is a greater realization. And what is interesting about Sri Aurobindo is there's very little coding. He is not a student of philosophy. He had read, he had looked at, but none of these things had determined his experience when they opened up. They came spontaneously, simply as the fruit of his sincere and full and utter dedication to the practice. When asked to close his eyes and meditate and see thoughts as coming from outside, he did, and it led immediately to realization. When he was led during his long imprisonment in the Alipur jail into deeper and deeper experiences, more and more he found the fulsome divinity in all the universe around him. These two mighty realizations occupied the being of Sri Aurobindo. It isn't that he picked up one and dropped it for the other. They fused, and I would recommend that his integrating vision, if we will stick with it, will be worth our study, because we will see at the end how there is a great spiritual realization which founds all of these perspectives and transcends them all. But along the way, we will come to love the world and to recognize the disguised Godhead within it. Now I'll stop, see if I can rediscover my place here. I'll read that last sentence again. All here turns on the mind's conception and the mental being's experience of reality. For according to the mind's experience or conception of reality will be its interpretation of data otherwise identical, the facts of the cosmos, individual experience, the realization of the supreme transcendence. All mental cognition depends on three elements: the percipient, the perception, and the thing perceived or percept. All or any of these three can be affirmed or denied reality. The question then is, which of these, if any, are real, and to what extent, or in what manner? If all three are rejected as instruments of a cosmic illusion, the farther and consequent question arises: is there then a reality outside them? And if so, what is the relation between the reality and the illusion? So at issue is truth and the significance of the world and the self. It is possible to affirm the reality of the percept of the objective universe and deny or diminish the reality of the percipient individual and his perceptive consciousness. In other words, world is real, observer is false. In the theory of the sole reality of matter, consciousness is only an operation of matter energy in matter, a secretion or vibration of the brain cells, a physical reception of images and a brain response, a reflex action or a reaction of matter to the contacts of matter. Well, this is contemporary psychology as an extension of materialism. Even if the rigidity of this affirmation is relaxed and consciousness otherwise accounted for, still it is no more than a temporary and derivative phenomenon, not the enduring reality. So, consciousness somehow manages an appearance in the material show of the world, but cannot last, because all things pass. The percipient individual is himself only a body and brain capable of the mechanical reactions we generalize under the name of consciousness. The individual has only a relative value and a temporary reality. But if matter turns out to be itself unreal or derivative and simply a phenomenon of energy, as seems now to be the probability, then energy remains as the sole reality. The percipient, his perception, the perceived object are only phenomena of energy. And this is admitted into our ken the truths of the special theory of relativity and of the general theory of relativity. He continues, but an energy without a being or existence possessing it, or a consciousness supplying it, an energy working originally in the void, for the material field in which we see it at work is itself a creation, looks itself very much like a mental construction, an unreality. Or it might be a temporary, inexplicable outbreak of motion which might seize at any time to create phenomena. The void of the infinite alone would be enduring and real. So that is to say, this would be an account of a world which is sheerly mental and not real in substance. And if there is no reality beneath, then the void alone is. This, by the way, is akin to his 1908 realization of nirvana. The Buddhist theory of the percipient and the perception and the percept as a construction of karma, the process of some cosmic fact of action, gave room to such a conclusion, for it led logically to the affirmation of the non-being, void or nihil, that is, shunya. It is possible indeed that what is at work is not an energy, but a consciousness. So he ends that examination. Now he's beginning a new line of argument. As matter reduces itself to energy seizable by us, not in itself, but in its results and workings, so energy could be reduced to action of a consciousness seizable by us, not in itself, but in its results and workings. So we don't apprehend the reality behind, in any case. Consciousness above, energy is a manifestation of consciousness. Matter is how we experience energy. We don't experience directly, but through its energized and concretized forms in the material world. Just so, if we rose to energy, we would not be able to experience consciousness directly. We would be experiencing consciousness's expression in the various forces of energy. But if this consciousness is supposed to work similarly in a void, we are exposed to the same conclusion, that it is a creator of temporary phenomenal illusions and itself illusory. Void and infinite zero and original non-existence is alone the enduring reality. So is consciousness based on zero? But these conclusions are not binding. For behind this consciousness, seizable in its works, only there may be an invisible original existence. A conscious energy of that existence could then be a reality. Sat Chit. Its creations too, made out of an infinitesimal substance of being, impalpable to the senses, but revealed to them at a certain stage of the action of energy as matter, would be real, as also the individual emerging as a conscious being of the original existence in a world of matter. This original reality might be a cosmic spiritual existence, a pantheos, a universal God, or it might have some other status, but in any case there would be not a universal illusion or mere phenomenon, but a true universe. So in the span of a few sentences, he's moved from his 1908 realization of nirvana into his realization in the Alipur jail of Vasudeva and given it a philosophic grounding. Brilliant. In the classical theory of illusionism, a soul and supreme spiritual existence is accepted as the one reality. It is by its essentiality the self. Yet the natural beings of which it is the self are only temporary appearances. It is, in its absoluteness, the substratum of all things, but the universe erected on the substratum is either a non-existence, a semblance, or else in some way unreally real. It is a cosmic illusion. Well, this takes us back to the first motto of the chapter, the selection from the Viveka Chudamani, pardon me, Brahman Satyam Jagan Vidya. For the reality is one without a second. It is immutable in eternity. It is the sole existence. One without a second. Chandogya Upanishad. We met this in chapter 9, the pure existent, in the first book. Chapter 6, 2, 1, that's the citation. Ekam evadityam. One without a second. There is nothing else. There are no true becomings of this being. It is and must forever remain void of name, feature, formation, relation, happening. If it has a consciousness, it can only be a pure consciousness of its own absolute being. But what then is the relation between the reality and the illusion? By what miracle or mystery does the illusion come to be? Or how does it manage to appear or to abide in time forever? Sri Aurobindo is letting them get away with a little bit here, because in his citation of the one without a second in the pure existent, he was driving towards the fundamental reality, inalienable reality of being everywhere, in all of its phases, in all of its appearances. He is allowing this Advaitic interpretation of the Upanishad to stand for the moment. It will not stand forever. As only Brahman is real, only a consciousness or a power of Brahman could be a real creator and a creator of realities. All reality must come from Brahman. And Brahman must ultimately be the creator. But since there can be no other reality than Brahman, pure and absolute, there can be no true creative power of Brahman. Because according to the Mayavadin's definition, the idea of a creator creating a many out of one is an impossibility and is excluded. A Brahman consciousness, aware of real beings, forms, and happenings, would signify a truth of the becoming, which they can't admit, a spiritual and material reality of the universe, which the experience of the supreme truth negates and nullifies, and with which its sole existence is logically incompatible. Maya's creation is a presentation of beings, names, forms, happenings, things impossible to accept as true, contradictory of the indeterminable purity of the one existence. There cannot be many. That's why the world is a lie. Maya then is not real. It is non-existent. Maya is itself an illusion, the parent of numberless illusions. But still, This illusion and its works have some kind of existence, and so must in some way be real. Moreover, the universe does not exist in a void, but stands because it is imposed on Brahman. This is the Mayavadin's own language. It is based, in a way, on the one reality. We ourselves in the illusion attribute its forms, names, relations, happenings to the Brahman, become aware of all things as the Brahman, see the reality through these unrealities. There is then a reality in Maya. It is at the same time real and unreal, existent and non-existent. Or let us say it is neither real nor unreal. It is a paradox, a supra-rational enigma. But what then is this mystery, or is it insoluble? How comes this illusion to intervene in Brahman existence? What is the nature of this unreal reality of Maya? Remember, the Mayavadin has argued that the world, kept to itself within its own range, has a kind of reality. It's not really real because only the absolute, immutable Brahman is real. But if you're living and working within the world of Maya, it seems to be real to you and has a relative reality only so long as you're in it. When you gain knowledge and escape from it and merge back into that one, then this world disappears. That is their argument. But why then could there ever be this mirage? How could this illusion, even if it works for us while we're within it, arise at all, if only that is? What gives it cause of being? So, his last phrase here refines the question which opens the chapter. What is the nature of this unreal reality of Maya? At first sight, one is compelled to suppose that Brahman must be in some way the percipient of Maya. For Brahman is the sole reality, and if he is not the percipient, who then perceives the illusion? So in other words, is it not Brahman itself, himself, seeing the spectacle of Maya? Is he not the one that sees it? But if Brahman is the percipient, how is it possible that the illusion can persist for a moment, since the true consciousness of the percipient is consciousness of self, an awareness solely of its own pure self-existence? Self-identity would dissolve difference the second it tries to arise, wouldn't it? If Brahman perceives the world and things with a true consciousness, then they must all be itself and real. But since they are not the pure self-existence, but at best are forms of it and are seen through a phenomenal ignorance, this realistic solution is not possible to the Mayavadin. Yet we have to accept, provisionally at least, the universe as a fact, and impossibility as a thing that is, since Maya is there, and her works persist and obsess the spirit with the sense, however false, of their reality. It is on this basis that we have then to face and solve the dilemma. So the universe is a provisional fact and is so regarded by the Mayavadins in order to argue against the provisional fact. If Maya is in some way real, the conclusion imposes itself that Brahman, the reality, is in that way the percipient of Maya. Maya may be his power of differentiating perception. For the power of Maya consciousness, which distinguishes it from the true consciousness of soul, spiritual self, is its creative perception of difference. So in the power of seeing the differentiation arises into being. Maya, then, is a power of Brahman's consciousness. Or Maya must be, at least if this creation of difference is considered to be only a result and not the essence of Maya force, some power of Brahman's consciousness. For it is only a consciousness that can see or create an illusion. And there cannot be another original or originating consciousness than that of Brahman. So Brahman itself must be Maya. But since Brahman is also self-aware forever, there must be a double status of Brahman consciousness. One conscious of the soul reality, the other conscious of the unrealities to which, by its creative perception of them, it gives some kind of apparent existence. These unrealities cannot be made of the substance of the reality, for then they also must be real. In this view, one cannot accept the assertion of the Upanishads that the world is made out of the supreme existence, is a becoming, an outcome or product of the eternal being, the last motto in the series. The other two from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad as well. In other words, the Mayavadan has painted himself into a corner with this logic and cannot be squared with the Upanishads. And the whole logic of the Mayavadins is there to prove the force of the Upanishads. So they have a problem. Brahman is not the material cause of the universe. Our nature, as opposed to ourself, is not made of its spiritual substance. It is constructed out of the unreal reality of Maya. But on the contrary, our spiritual being is of that substance, is indeed the Brahman. Brahman is above Maya, but he is also the percipient of his creations both from above and from within Maya. This dual consciousness offers itself as the sole plausible explanation of the riddle of a real eternal percipient, an unreal percept, the universe, and a perception, our knowledge, that is a half-real creator of unreal percepts, knowledge and power of Maya. So this is not a very tidy solution for the monist. If there is not this dual consciousness, if Maya is the sole conscious power of Brahman, then one of two things must be true. Either the reality of Maya as a power is that it is a subjective action of Brahman consciousness emerging out of its silence and superconscient immobility and passing through experiences that are real because they are part of the consciousness of Brahman, but unreal because they are not part of its being, or else Maya is Brahman's power of cosmic imagination inherent in his eternal being, creating out of nothing names, forms, and happenings that are not in any way real. In that case, Maya would be real, but her works entirely fictitious, pure imaginations. But can we affirm imagination as the sole dynamic or creative power of the eternal? So again, the two positions are, first, Maya creates subjectively, but those creations are not based on being. Or two, Maya is a power that imagines unrealities. Through this imagination, we come to the conclusion of tonight's study. Imagination is a necessity for a partial being with an ignorant consciousness, i.e. us. For it has to supplement its ignorance by imaginations and conjectures. There can be no place for such a movement in the soul consciousness of a soul reality which has no reason to construct unrealities, for it is ever pure and self-complete. It is difficult to see what in its own being could impel or induce such a soul existence complete in its very essence, blissful in its eternity, containing nothing to be manifested, timelessly perfect, to create an unreal time and space and people it to all eternity with an interminable cosmic show of false images and happenings. This solution is logically untenable. So again, this analogy is ill-founded, will not serve. The other solution we retain for next week. So we've come a long way this evening. I think you would agree. We'll turn to our look into Savitri now. Tonight, I think we'll come to Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, Canto 1, The Pursuit of the Unknowable. All is too little that the world can give. Its power and knowledge are the gifts of time, and cannot fill the spirit's sacred thirst. Although of one these forms of greatness are, and by its breath of grace our lives abide, although more near to us than nearness self, it is some utter truth of what we are. Hidden by its own works, it seemed far off, impenetrable, occult, voiceless, obscure. The presence was lost by which all things have charm, the glory lacked of which they are dim signs. The world lived on made empty of its cause, like love when the beloved's face is gone. The labor to know seemed a vain strife of mind. All knowledge ended in the unknowable. The effort to rule seemed a vain pride of will, a trivial achievement scorned by time. All power retired into the omnipotent. A cave of darkness guards the eternal light. A silence settled on his striving heart. Absolved from the voices of the world's desire, he turned to the ineffable's timeless call, a being intimate and unnameable, a wide, compelling ecstasy and peace, felt in himself and all, and yet ungrasped, approached and faded from his soul's pursuit, as if forever luring him beyond. Near it retreated, far it called him still. Nothing could satisfy but its delight. Its absence left the greatest actions dull. Its presence made the smallest seem divine. When it was there, the heart's abyss was filled. But when the uplifting deity withdrew, existence lost its aim in the inane. The order of the immemorial planes, the godlike fullness of the instruments, were turned to props for an impermanent scene. But who that mightiness was, he knew not yet. Impalpable, yet filling all that is. It made and blotted out 1,000,000 worlds, and took and lost 1,000 shapes and names. It wore the guise of an indiscernible vast, or was a subtle kernel in the soul. A distant greatness left it huge and dim. A mystic closeness shut it sweetly in. It seemed sometimes a figment or a robe, and seemed sometimes his own colossal shade. A giant doubt overshadowed his advance. We'll continue that passage next week as a companion to the life divine. Thank you for your attention. Namaste, Jai Ma. And to our friends on